Hello. Hi, how are you? No? I'm very good, thank you. I got a little bit of a infection yesterday and day before, but today I'm feeling much better. Hello, Danny Tashidele. Good morning from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Tashidele from Belarus. Good afternoon, Eva Harris. How are you? I'm good, thank you. From Tenerife, Spain. Tashidele Danny. I hope you're doing well in Labule. Tenzin Dele, Rinpoche Tashdele from Barcelona. Tashidele Rinpoche la. Good morning Rinpoche from Salt Spring Island. Tashidele Lamala. Okay. Hello. Good morning from Santa Fe. So good to see you. Please take good care of yourself. Thank you. You too. The America right now is going through a very difficult time, and I think the less populated area, such as in Santa Fe, probably less impact comparison to New York and other major metropolitan city. You know, it's a little bit densely populated, so, and you also take care of yourself. Deki children Tashidele Rinpoche la from Nepal. Tashidele what? Arte Tamong. Tashidele from Karsang. Love from Bhutan. La. Sonam children. Dagudele Australia. Thank you. Jingme Pemanchuzo. Hello Rinpoche from London. So kind of you to give us your time. My pleasure. It is, how to say, like I have said previously, you know, like usually I have some schedules in this moment, but you know, due to our current crisis and the challenges that we are going through, and then also with the more public awareness in terms of health, you know, and then we are taking precaution, you know, to avoid any public gathering. Tashidele Rinpoche from India, your town, Salugara. Thank you. Good afternoon from Scotland, Tashidele Rinpoche. Tashidele from South Africa, Tashidele Rinpoche. Okay. Tashidele from New York, Kunzampamo. Please look after yourself and please be safe. And I know it's a very so much pressure in New York at the moment, so please be careful and look after yourself. Tashidele from Italy. Tashidele to you, Valeria. I think this time the live streaming is going to be a little bit like Tashidele to every one of us, you know, to each other. Yeah. A little bit like reciting the mantra of Tashidele to each other. You know, like you are saying Tashidele to me, I'm saying Tashidele to you, you're saying Tashidele back to me, I'm saying Tashidele back to you. Yes, all is well here. The castle works are progressing. Thank you very much, Daniela, for dedicating your time and your energy for the center. Rinpoche Latashidele, how are you? I am very good. Thank you very much. Felt a little bit unwell a few days ago, but I'm feeling much better right now. Because we are happy to see you. Haha. Haha. Okay, so I think now the seriousness of the Q&A starts now. Please, could you define a compassion and tell the difference between the empathy and compassion? Empathy is when you still have influence of your illusion. Compassion is when when you overcome the state of the illusion of your mind. Because, you cannot be compassionate at the same time having an ego clinging to yourself. Because the very definition of compassion is to exchange. But if you don't have the realization of selfish, if you don't have the sense of quality or the realization in a very selfless way, not a practice, but when you reach that is a state of mind, that is not a practice. When you reach that state of mind, and then naturally you're you're bound to be compassionate. It's a little bit like a waterfall. As there's a strong current, and then there's a little bit of edge, and then there's a waterfall. It's meant to be a waterfall. When there's a little bit of edge, when there's a little bit of a strong current, and then there's always a waterfall. So that's that. Empathy. Many people who practice. Like you can have a very small level of empathy. You can have an extreme level of empathy, such as empathy to the small insect in front of you, when there's small flies or mosquitoes, when they're stuck in a window, thinking that they want to go out, and you want to catch them, and then to give them the temporary liberation, from that suffering. And if there's any kind of any form of animal that you are trying to save in front of you, that can be empathy. And then such as let's say you are trying to you're trying to save an animal that is about to be killed or about to be dying, destined to die almost, and then you try to save that sentient being, that living being, and that is still empathy. You can put it as a compassion. Yeah, it is a little bit compassionate in that very moment, but it is not permanently compassionate, because as I said to you many times, compassion is a realization. It's not a method. Empathy is a method. Compassion, in order to realize full compassion, and in order to fully develop the meaning of compassion, you need to spend your time to dissolve your self-attachment. When you dissolve the self-attachment, and then you have to ask the question, what is the meaning of self-attachment? The very cause and the reason and the essence of the self-attachment comes from the illusion of our state of mind. The very cause of the state of the illusion comes from the state of ignorant. The very state of the ignorant comes from unable to recognize, because of not able to being recognized, the nature of mind. Therefore, there's ignorant, the state of ignorant. And then due to ignorant, and then there's illusion and projection. And due to the projection and the illusion, and then we create a self-attachment, we create a self-illusion and a projection externally in more rigid way. And then, of course, we do harmful act, and we also do positive act also. But empathy is not a compassion like what we can understand. So empathy can go in a very great length. It can come down to saving one animal that is that is stuck in a window. You simply want to catch and release out of the window to free them, to saving a lot of animals. or saving people, like let's say there's a homeless person in the street, like a few days ago I was in the supermarket buying something, and then I was waiting outside in the street, and I met this homeless guy, and we talk, and then I give him some money, and then that is empathy. I'm not trying to discredit other good people, I'm trying to discredit myself in order for you to understand clearly what is compassion and what is not compassion, what is empathy. So like myself, I do some good deed, and that is a good empathy, that is not compassion. So the level of compassion is that when you fully awaken your own state of mind, and when you have fully overcome all the illusion of our state of mind, and then when you have this constant self-awareness, not the self-importance or paranoia, self-awareness, and then at that time a genuine act of compassion, a genuine act of speech, genuine how do I say thought of compassion, wanting to help other people in a very genuine way, will start from there. Why at that time so important and so much difference is because when you have compassion, you have overcome your own illusion. Therefore, anything external illusion may appear with disappointment, betrayal, rejection, anger, hatred, discrimination, racism, or mistreatment towards you. You will be also overcoming that, because if you are, overcome already the state of mind of your own illusion, and being compassionate in response in a natural way, and then anything that is also external challenge, you will also respond in a very natural way, and overshadowing, with the meaning of compassion, not pushing ourselves with the compassion. Many Buddhist people nowadays, when they think about idea about compassion, they think it's some kind of a knowledge that they can study. They think it's something to examine. They think it's something to create. Empathy is definitely something that you can create a platform in a social media, or in a religious gathering or social gathering, spreading awareness, all these are acts of empathy. But the compassion, the meaning of compassion, means selfless act. Selfless act will come only when you overcome your illusion. And also, anything that is externally challenging, such as betrayal, racism, discrimination, disrespecting you, embarrassing you, all of that uncomfortable things that is externally appearing will no longer seen as a challenge. Why? Because if you have overcome your own illusion, external illusion is simply temporary, and therefore we call these kind of individual bodhisattva, Changju Semba, bodhisattva. You cannot be limitless compassionate. Some people, they say, I am being very compassionate, and yet people betrayed me, hurt me, disappointed me, abandoned me, didn't even thought of me. And how can I generate compassion? And my answer to that is that is the clear meaning that you have not understood the meaning of compassion. That clearly indicate that you still need to do retreat. That's still indicating that you still need to practice. If you do visualization of shamatha, vipassana, visualization of the deity, whether it's a yidam practice or soma practice, or whether it's a yoga practice, such development of empathy, temporary, of overwhelmingly with a great compassion in a very emotional way, can appear here and there. But do not make mistake by thinking that what is the realization and what is the glimpse of experience. In Tibetan we call it nyam. Nyam means a glimpse of experience. A glimpse of experience, whether it's positive or negative, does not give you the right to say that I have a realization. So if you really have understood the meaning of compassion, then you will have no struggle that is facing from external side. Just like Buddha Shakyamuni, he is an enlightened being, compassionate being. Therefore, external threat, external danger, so-called, that we perceive as a danger, becomes, becomes meaningless to him. And so that is the meaning of compassion. But ourself as an individual, we have not reached that level yet. So we can evolve ourselves by understanding more and more, accumulate more and more about empathy, and not not jumping all over the place by thinking that I have understood the meaning of compassion. Compassion is like this, compassion is like that, and this, and giving a big talk about compassion is not going to help anybody. It's basically you are giving the white cloth. You're giving a white cloth to somebody and say, there you go, from now on you are doctor. And then giving somebody a red clothes, or yellow robe, and saying, okay, from now on you're a monk, or from now on you're a yogi. You cannot just give a name to somebody and say that, that person became that. That person become, that person, that individual doesn't becomes that just because you give a name. You have to accumulate quality, and in order to define that quality, we give a name. So just like that, in order to have a, so because if you try to pretend, then you're an imposter. If you try to be compassionate, then you are trying to pretend, which is a very thing and a very obstacle that we are trying to overcome. So don't rush yourself to have a compassion. Try to practice, to focus in your mind and understand the meaning of the reflection of our mind, and understanding the meaning of the illusion of our mind, and how to overcome and way to overcome, and study and examining to yourself, and with the humbleness, with the attitude of humbleness, with the attitude of full of joyness and the humbleness, and the sense of glimpse, and the sense of content, and that content continuity. I think that is very important. If you try to practice Buddha Dharma with excitement, then it's not going to help you, it's not going to help anybody. It may do more harm. Then of course, if you have a negative intention doesn't appear all of a sudden by accident. When you think that you have compassionate, when you think that you have a compassion, and then, but in order to have a genuine compassion, you need to be a selfless. You cannot pretend to be selfless. You cannot pretend that you have a compassion. You just cannot pretend. If you pretend, the more harm will come to you. And the result will be like this. You will be asking a question, oh, I am being compassionate to everybody, but now people betrayed me, they hurt me, they abandoned me, and I don't know whether I should be compassionate or not. That clearly shows that you did not understand the meaning of compassion. That clearly shows that you have mistaken what is empathy and what is compassion. You can show empathy, but you don't go out of control. When you pretend that you have compassion, you go out of control because you are trying to fulfill your ego. You are trying to fulfill your own selfishness, desire to claim that you are important, to claim that you are a holy being, to claim that you are a great being. That is the cause of suffering. The cause of suffering is greed and the selfishness. So when you pretend, even the method of compassion, if you don't understand clearly, in order to fulfill your own pride and selfishness, it will come back to the cycle of suffering, like we always say. So yeah, I think that's it. So I'm going. So basically, try to make a distinction between empathy and compassion. Accumulate empathy. Practice compassion. That is important. Accumulate empathy, right? Practice compassion. And the number 3, let the compassion arise by itself. Let the compassion do the work like a natural wave as it is. Do not pollute your compassion with pretending attitude, because when you start pretending, the whole method of compassion, the whole practice of compassion becomes the daily source of fulfilling your pride and claiming that you're important, and then claiming that you're pure, claiming that you're superior, claiming that you're a bodhisattva, claiming that you're a holy being. And all of that projection and the illusion of mind will come back to hurt you at the end, because when you continue to pretend, then you are lying to yourself as a human being. Forget about the Buddhist method. You're lying to yourself, and then you cannot maintain. As people, as there's a positive growth, there's always a negative growth on the side, and there's people who betray you, harm you, cheat on you, lie to you, and you will be unable to cope with that, and then you will crumble. So therefore, don't pretend. Don't pretend to be compassionate. You can pretend to have empathy. You can accumulate empathy, that's fine. But pretending to be compassionate, that's walking, with your steps a little bit too far. So, I'm going to the next question, okay? Okay, so there's another person asking question. What's the difference between practicing compassion and implementing compassion? I think there's 3 things. Of course, I will explain to you the practicing compassion and implementing compassion. Like, let me create a scenario here. Let's say you're a practitioner, and other practitioner comes also, that you're having a conversation, and and then other person about to do something terrible or something harmful, and then you remind that person the meaning of compassion. You remind that person, the meaning of empathy, and that is implementing a compassion, in a very short term perspective, in a very short term impact, but it's not, whatever this awareness of compassion that you may try to give to the people, don't make that a bubble in your head. You accumulate something good, you remind other people with the basic goodness, and reminding other people with the what is negativity and what is the basic goodness in our heart, in our basic human quality. You remind them. That is a little bit like implementing compassion to other people. So I think that is very important, and then that should not become your bubble. That should not, you do something with a good small deed with implementing compassion to other people. You do that little as possible, but yet at the same time practicing compassion. What is the meaning of practicing compassion? Practicing compassion comes down to only one part, and that is visualization. You cannot practice with how do I say, you cannot practice with how should I say this, you should not practice with the fire with your hand. You should practice how to create a fire with your hand. So that's the difference. If you try to play with the fire, of course you burn your hand. But if you try to create a fire with your hand, how does it with the stone in ancient time, with the wood and all that, and then it's a different, you don't harm yourself. So basically what I'm trying to say is that, practicing compassion is only one method, and within one method, and there's so many different methods, and that is only by visualization. When you accumulate a visualization, with offering visualization to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattva, and generating generosity with the visualization to all the sentient beings, to all the 6 realms, or 3 realms, or whatever the realms, or how many realms you believe, it doesn't matter. Basically, other than yourself, larger number of sentient beings. Let's put that on the side. So, continuity with that kind of a visualization is the only key to minimize, to initiate, and also to minimize the selfishness habit. So when you continue more and more, if you practice your compassion based upon the reality and challenges along with the reality, then you are risking your hand, you are risking your own quality. You don't do that. It's a little bit like before you become a Buddha, you pretend to be a Buddha, you pretend that you met a Krintara, you pretend that you met Avalokiteshvara, you pretend that you have a many student, you pretend that you can give 84,000 teachings. Well, in fact, you cannot, right? So therefore, pretending to be compassionate is not something, helpful. And the way to generate compassion, way to practice compassion, is by visualization. When you accumulate a visualization, such as a generosity of a visualization of offering, what you offer in actual reality doesn't matter. The most important is accumulating and reciting the amount of times that you make a offering to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattva, and generating your compassion to all the sentient beings, and then reciting that again and again, again and again, again and again. That will give you, that is the initiation, that is the beginning of and the method to dissolve your, self-attachment. And then when there's an absence of the self-attachment, and then the genuine compassion arises by itself naturally, step after step. It doesn't become a little bit like, oh yeah, today I'm Bodhisattva, I wear all this ornament objects, and then I'm Bodhisattva. It doesn't work like that. It never goes like that. So practicing compassion means practicing visualization. That comes down to generating offering and being generous with the visualization. What you have and don't have, that is not important. What you create with your mind is important. Just like our selfishness is not external object. Like what we have, danzin, our selfishness. The definition of selfishness does not exist in the external objects. It exists in ourself. So therefore, in order to minimize and also to dissolve that, the only method is that you make many offerings as possible with the visualization. Whether it's offering to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattva, whether it's generating a positive energy to all the sentient beings, to all the different realms, and accumulating and reciting that again and again, and that is the most important, So, and then you will also, and by doing that, you will overcome the struggle of oh yeah, if I'm compassionate, and then I will lose everything. If I'm not compassionate, and then I'm a terrible practitioner. People think in a very white and black, situation. So, so you don't have to worry about all these things. These, so all these obstacles, whether you call it obstacles, whether you call challenges, whether you call all the different, difficulties, whatever the name you call it, the way to solve it is by accumulating the visualization. Visualization for offering, visualization and generating all the positive energy to all the sentient beings. So when you accumulate that, then naturally the internal message and the self-reflection comes down to, the moment of selfishness is not important. self-importance as an individual being, wanting to contribute, wanting to give a positive reflection to other people is necessary, so you will naturally have this kind of a personal importance, but with the absence of extreme selfishness, so yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry. Sitting Samdru. In lockdown, I'm reading what? Sutra. I realize Buddha is. Okay. What we call empathy in Tibetan, Buchela. Empathy in Tibetan, chamba, chamba, chamningje, we call chamningje, changju kusem, we put together, we put the kindness and the compassion and the bodhicitta act, so in Tibetan we call it, chamba, and then cham, Nyingje, is compassion, and then Changchuk Gesem Rinpoche, we call it bodhicitta. So Cham Nyingje Changchuk Gesem Rinpoche is something very important. It's something that we hear in all the Mahasiddhas and all the teachings of the great masters in the past. They always mention here and there, again. Like a mother, father who has a love and affection to their children, to their families. Chamze. Tsewa means love, and chamba means the empathy. Nyingje is compassion. Lolina prayers. Thank you very much, Rinpoche from Spain. When and how does our continuum mental bond? Maybe you are still watching. I don't understand your question. Can you please write it again? Thank you. Migma Bhutia. Rinpoche, our younger sister, is working in hospital as a nurse in Canada, and says she is taking care also with a COVID patient. So please, Rinpoche, pray for her and the safety and her whole staffs. Thank you. Migma Bhutia, yes, I will make my prayers in my daily practice, as I always do my daily practice, and then everybody is here, and then please make a prayer for this individual who is also a nurse based in Canada and looking after the patients. And I speak with sometimes there's a nurse, sometimes there's a doctor. I speak to them on Instagram and also on the Facebook, and I also speak with the people who are those who are discharged from the hospitals of the COVID-19. I speak to them, and then I try to encourage them, and then of course every one of you here also, please try your best to spread out the positive message. Not overdoing it, but just try to use your wisdom and your mind to understand the other person's situation. Pak Sim Ko. Rinpoche can brief us on meditation during this period of lockdown. Encourage more of us to do some simple meditation. I think I can make some kind of a video. Then I can make some kind of a videos, and then I can share with you. All of you, but not now during the live streaming. Different. Jokan want you. Can please differences between nirvana and heaven? I don't heard a term nirvana in Christian or other religion. Of course not. Yeah, there's many common things between the different tradition and religion and so on and so forth. But then, belief is completely different. That's why we give it different names. We call it, some religion we call it Christian, some Christian, religion we call Hindu, based upon their difference on their faith. And then within their own faith, they have their own different lineages and different traditions. And, so even we have this kind of major few religion that we see in this world, and then among this major religion, and then of course there's a many different differences within their big different religion. So not hearing terms of nirvana is very common sense, let's say. All of illusion. It is a big job. Stefan, I don't understand your question. Okay, I'm just going to read down the comment. Oh my God, there's so many. Dakota Lane. How to encourage our non-Buddhist friends now? How to encourage? I think way to encourage your non-Buddhist friends, to encourage the non-Buddhist friends is not preaching them about Buddhism. That's number one, and not making prayers or pujas in the front of them. I think that's second important. Third is that let them be inspired by your quality, by your improvement, of as a human being, and I think that will change the opinion about you, and then they will also try to find what kind of a path or practice that you've been doing, and then that is the time that you actually speak about Buddha Dharma, and then you talk about the cause and effect, and you talk about impermanence and so on and so forth. But if you try to tell them that you be Buddhist, then it's not going to work. It's a little bit like going up to the person who has a so-called expensive car, and then you go to that person and then you say, that expensive object that you have, there has so many middlemen in this company, and then what you paid is much more, you are paying much more than what it is, and you are paying off all this middleman under this brand, therefore you are stupid. That person is going to get pissed off with you, because we talk about car, right? When we talk about car, and then the tire has its own company, the engine has its own company, the interior designing has its own company, the glass and the window glass has its own company, so within all this companies and different manufacturers, there's so many different salesmen and middlemen in between, and then you go to that person and you say, I'm a Buddhist person. What you have right now here, you are paying much more than for the value of what it is, and you are paying so many middlemen in between. And that middleman, that person who owns the expensive car, so-called expensive car, will get pissed off with you and say, "What are you trying to say? This is the best answer you can give to me." So something like that. Basically, it becomes a meaningless approach. So I think the most important is that you being who you are, and you practice and inspire your friends by showing your quality and the result of your quality. I think that is the most important. If you try to say, "Hey, Buddha is important, I have this book," and then you need to listen, you need to practice, people are not going to listen. They're going to continue with what they want. So the most important is be inspired, by your qualities. If you look at the if you look at some some practitioners, let's say, some people in this world who are well known, who are famous, let's say, and then, when we discover that they're actually a Buddhist practitioners, there's even a certain percentage of people who actually become a Buddhist based upon the good history that well-known person had, so that's the most important. Good afternoon. How should we deal with the leaders who are responsible for thousands of people dying? How should we deal with the leaders who are responsible for thousands of people dying? It's how do I say? Our society, let's say, it's a very much sophisticated. And the moment you know that certain leaders are bad or been irresponsible, many of them either they have died or either they have officially resigned. And because what we see in the news is at least 1 week old sometimes it's maybe a few days old, and some stories they're even 20 years old, but the way it surfaces within our society sometimes is too late. And and then even we want to hold some people accountable of their own wrongdoing and being irresponsible. By that time, either they have resigned officially and step aside, or in their 80s or in their 90s or in their late 70s, or either they have died already. So I think if you really want to hold this people accountable, all these leaders accountable, I think the most important is that we have to open our own eyes and make our own judgment more clearly. I think that is very important, because when you want to step forward and want to point finger at other people, you need much more than just the truth. Because some people, they think truth is only the key to bring down this corruption and this difficulties and this crisis, Yeah, of course, truth. But the most important is having a good people around you is most important. Not doing anything alone. And there's a good leaders, and then there's the bad leaders, and we have to, stop the idea that everything is going to be so pure and perfect and beautiful like heaven on earth. Nothing is going to remain as a heaven or as a pure land, because our whole society is based upon how should I say? I'm more smarter than you, I'm more triggered than you, I'm more manipulative than you, and then I become a leader. Sometimes they become a leader like that. Sometimes, they become a leader based on transparency, and they fight against the corruption, and then they try to bring the country in a sense of unity, and they try to help people, and they try to make the government, how do I say, more transparent, whatever they were trying to do. So you cannot just say that every leader is bad. But I think the most important is that whatever you may want to do, the most important is that you're having a good, honest people around you who has a genuine goal and a genuine direction and pure intention. I think that's the most important. And then little change here and there can come. But then again, it comes down to a certain country. Like there's a certain country that who, they are, the government, they are afraid or a little bit shaken, let's say, if ever there's a person who's speaking out in a YouTube, if there's a person speaking out on a Facebook video, if there's a person speaking out on the internet, and then government say, yeah, we are taking precaution and we understand that, and we are doing everything that we can, and then there's some country who says, we don't care about what you post on the internet. It's irrelevant. It's nothing to do with us, and they will continue to, make the changes the way they want. So your truth needs a strategy. Your truth cannot be just put over there and say that all of you are bad people. Then you will isolate yourself. But also being afraid to be isolated and being fearful and not speaking out the truth is also not a solution in our society. But you have to understand which country that you are living in, because some countries, if you speak out on the internet, the government, they say, yeah, we understand that, we've seen that. At least there's a sense of acceptance and say, yeah, we know what's going on, And then there's some government, say that, we don't care what you post, we don't care what you say, we do what we want. We are in power, and after our terms is finished, we are going to appoint the people that we like. So it's, sometimes it goes like that. And then, and sometimes the government doesn't even respond. And they say, whatever you say, you're just, how do I say, Western mindset individual who have no connection to the reality. You can do no harm, and whatever you say, it's nothing to do with us. And they, go on with the complete rejection and denial. And, so I think the most important is that knowing which country you're living in. Of course, we have this kind of utopia idea of our world that, we are in the 21st century, we have to speak out and, tell the truth, and we have to do what we can, and energetic, it's nice. It feels great, but knowing your country, I think, is far more important. And knowing the mentality of your country is also important. And knowing the mentality within the social media, to the social media, from the social media. That psychological impact within your own country, and studying that. And witnessing that, studying that, how much actually change that it has been or that has existed, since you discovered the internet within your own country. So I think examining your own country, and then, I think that is important. If you want to bring some change, and of course you need good people around you. You cannot just say that, yeah, that's what I believe. Anybody can write things on the internet and say that's what I believe, but it doesn't change a thing. We have so many things that is written on the internet, much more than since the existence of human being. Let's put it that way, just putting an example. But then that doesn't change a thing, So, but then Blaming everything. Blaming is easy. Being responsible and carrying on with the responsibility is also challenging. So I think we have to understand our own reality, and seeing the reality and seeing the social media mentality, combining both within your own country, how much of an impact your own truth that you believe can truly make the changes in the people's life, truly can bring the day-to-day life of the ordinary people. And I think understanding that, examining that, I think is quite important. Otherwise, blaming that leaders, this leaders, anybody can do that. Children can, even the kids can blame their parents, for not giving them what they want. Blaming and pointing finger is not the key. Way of presenting that and also offering a solution, how to maintain after that is the important. And then also it comes down to any government institution, or an organization, comes down to the transparency and the commitment to the transparency. So that's that. Let's move to the next question. Okay, so answer please. Doni, answer please. I have asked 3 times. Yeah, please go ahead. What was your question? Okay, so I'm waiting for the question. Rinpoche, think of us in Poland, please. We have a fascism here. Government wants to depopulate us. Okay. You have my prayers, and you also do your prayers. What is your daily rituals, Rinpoche? My daily ritual, today, my daily ritual is Siksa Mahakala and Amitabha. Sanjivaba may practice, and then Chatupa practice. Chatu Siksa Mahakala is, how do I say it, emanation of our Lokiteshvara, and it has been widely practiced throughout all the different traditions. And it is the how do I say it, the most famous and praised protector in Tibetan Buddhism. So historically, you understood. It was brought to Tibet in 1,000 years ago, and it was practiced all over the Asia, and now all around the world, of course. Okay. Didi Dwalkar. How do we draw the line between blaming and holding one accountable? Oh. How do we draw the line between blaming and holding one accountable? I think the most important is that to hold one accountable, you need to have evidence. Pointing finger, anybody can do that. You need to have evidence, and then you have to go to the court. So that's that. Going going to the neighbor's house and pointing them finger is not going to solve anything, you know. Pete, Rinpoche, I learned mindfulness is something that we do not know mistake in daily living. I don't understand, Pete. Can you ask your question a little bit more clearly? Thank you. Susie Chu, should we practice a ritual poa as a daily practice? Well, it really depends. It depends on the, how do I say, I'm getting a little bit, how do I say, because I repeat this question many times, because you cannot do a poa, you know, by being a person who is in denial of the meaning of the impermanence. If you have the true acceptance from the bottom of your heart to the meaning of impermanence, to the meaning of illusion, not forcefully, you know, not with the obligated attitude, but genuinely, by the result of accumulating practice, then any poa practice, whether it's a simply poa practice, whether it's a chur poa practice, it will be really beneficial only by then. You know, by only transmitting your state of your consciousness to the state of the nirvana or the state of dharmakaya, whatever you call it, it's not going to make any much difference. You know, the most important is that you do your basic practice with the basic foundation. You know, if you cannot overcome your selfishness simply based on your visualization of throwing your consciousness into the state of the dharmakaya, it's not going to help anybody. You know, because, you know, when you accumulate again and again, then it becomes a little bit like a regular visualization. You don't have a sense of meaning within that. You know, it becomes part of that so much in a day reflection. So the most important is that, you know, when you continue to do Charisic practice, you know, with the visualization, to minimize the selfishness attitude, selfishness act, based, you know, by accumulating all the visualization practice, like I have mentioned previously, by visualization, offering to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattva, and then generating all the compassionate energy to all the sentient being, whether you believe in the 6th realm, 3 realms, doesn't matter. You know, basically, other than yourself, generating compassion and radiance to all the sentient being. You accumulate that again and again. Then, when you know, when you have this kind of understanding that, you know, how do I say, this is a pure, you know, selfishness act, and until now I have been fooling myself, and therefore from now on I truly understood the true meaning of selfishness act, and then the cause and the result of that. And then you have this some kind of a self-reflection and the self-distance, you know, a little bit like a being reborn again. And then if you start doing a chur practice after that, you know, by practicing chur or practicing poa, then it can be beneficial. You know, if you counting everything in your daily life and then trying to throw your state of consciousness in a state of the dharmakaya again and again, like some kind of a very basic visualization, it's not going to help. You know, poa practice is not for accumulation. It's not reciting. You know, poa practice is there to practice for a short period of time, you know, but it is not a practice that you have to do it. It's not a practice that's something given importance, you know, without a foundation. It becomes, you know, meaningful only when you have a foundation. And the foundation is Gerim. Gerim is, how do I say, creation of visualization. Zorim means completion. So if you have this, refuge, bodhicitta mindset, understanding the difference between the empathy and the compassion, and the foundation of Shine Lathong, and understanding about Kirim, the creation, and compassion, and also understanding the meaning of shamatha and vipassana, and understanding the how to say the basic Buddhist teachings from the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni, understanding the basic understanding about the existence of the Vajrayana teachings, and then when you have this understanding, and then after that, slowly, the meaning of the power, the meaning of virtue practice naturally develops, So, so that's that. Rinpoche, how is the situation there? Please stay safe. Tsiring Paldin. I mean, this is the fifth week, I think. This is the fifth week, so staying indoor, buying food, sanitizing my hand, so yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it's the new normal. In that way, it's okay. And the most important is that all of you, please be safe and look after yourself, That's the most important. Okay, Lobsang Tse, what is the meaning of life in Buddhism and how to live? I think, the meaning of life can be many different things according to different Mahasiddha's teaching. Some Mahasiddha's teachings, they will say, abandon everything, the worldly life, and live in a remote area, and then you will truly understand the meaning of Dharma, the meaning of practice. And some Mahasiddhas, they will say that, keep it simple, and continue with your commitment, be good, be compassionate, be generous, and have a little bit of wisdom in your mind, practice, and be happy, so it comes down to a different Mahasiddhas. So I think the general common foundation is that the life of Buddhism is basically this is a samsara, and we have to overcome it, and we have to see the nature of mind, and that's it. And how to live with the Buddha Dharma teachings, it's up to your own instructor and up to your own challenges that you're facing, and never try to copy anybody. If you try to copy, you're lost. So don't try to copy. And how to live with the Buddhist teachings in our mind, the most important is following the guideline of your instructor, and also by doing some retreat. When I say retreat, doesn't mean like 3 years, like maybe 3 months, 1 month, maybe 1 day or so, once in a week, maybe once in a month, twice a month, that kind of a retreat, so then it will give a deeper meaning of self-reflection. I think that's the important, so that's that. Balzo on the Buddha Rinpoche, please give your blessing for speedy recovery of my grandmother, who is 98 years old and quite sick right now. Yes, I will offer my prayers in my daily practice, which I will do it a little bit later, and then when I make an offering, and then I will include your grandmother in my prayers, and then I wish you all the best for you and your family. Okay. Okay, Tsoja Jigme. Because of a very violent experience with the father during childhood, it is difficult to be confident with men, authority, and with the Lama. This is an obstacle in a spiritual path. What is the advice can you give? Okay, so you had what? You had a very violent experience when you were a kid, and also with men with authority, with the Lama. This is an obstacle in a spiritual path. What advice can you give? I think most important is that such wrongdoing of other people cannot be kept silent and should not kept silent. That's number one. And number two is that how do I say? We some of us we as a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, or we can call our Asian mentality. Some of us, we have this kind of a strict mentality about how the children should be and how the parents should be, and I think we think a lot about what is the meaning of Buddhist, and and we try to give some kind of a definition to ourselves. I think the advice that I can give is that simply accept that what you experience was wrong, not your fault but their fault. Because as you were the children and the minor, and the reason we call it minor and children is because they have not reached the age of adulthood, let's say. That's why we call it childhood. So any mistreatment during the childhood time, and it's wrong. So don't feel bad for blaming them, and don't give overweight to yourself by saying that how do I say by saying, oh, this is my spiritual difficulty of the obstacle of my spiritual path. Okay, let's talk like that. If you look at the Milarepa, okay, Milarepa was a Buddhist practitioner, and the whole country is a Buddhist practitioner, right? So his uncle and his aunt took everything from him, because in Milarepa he was coming from the noble family, noble family. So he was betrayed by his own, by his own uncle, by his own aunt, family members who has a knowledge about the Buddhism, because the whole country has been under Buddhism for hundreds of years. So the influence about the Buddhism, there was no lack of influence about the Buddhism. So Buddhism understanding and the belief is definitely there. And Milarepa, he was not afraid of saying that they did certain harmful, but he was also not stuck in the past. What you can do to yourself is that please don't get stuck in the past. Those people who have harmed you, they choose to disrespect you. They did not make a mistake. They choose to disrespect you. So the most important is that do not respond with a hatred. Hatred is a very useless emotion. Even you want to take revenge, hatred is the most useful emotion. If you want to take a revenge, with anger, it's also very useless. If you really want to take revenge, you have to, you have to become stronger by yourself as an individual. Whether you're a woman, whether you're a man, doesn't matter. You have to become stronger based on honesty, based on transparency, and be the great example. If they regret, let them regret. If they regret and if they want to change and adapt according to your new experience, and let them. but don't respond with hatred, because hatred will give you exhaustion. You want to take revenge? Go ahead, take revenge. But if you take revenge with anger, also it doesn't give a good conclusion. It definitely doesn't give a good result at all. So you want to take a revenge, you can take a revenge in a different form. And that is shine. Be transparent, be honest, practice, radiate yourself with the sincerity, with the genuine quality, with the principle of truth, with the principle of kindness, with the principle of being kind and genuine to other people. So I think that is the most important. There is no such as a spiritual obstacle. There's never such as a spiritual obstacle. The most important is that you see the obstacle as it is, and you find a solution. And the solution is not with a hatred, it's not with a sense of anger. And the solution to overcome any spiritual obstacle is to continue to see the meaning of impermanence, continue to see, and believing the genuine quality of yourself as a human being, continue to practice Buddha Dharma, continue to be transparent, continue to speak the truth, and that's the most important. Okay. So today I did a little bit longer, which is 1 hour and a half. So we have 5 minutes. G.K. Broccoli, Rinpoche, please pray for a friend of my family, Tom, who is 40 years old, in intensive care, currently induced in coma, being treated for coronavirus. Thank you. You can, G.K. Barclay, you can put your friend's name in our website, which is paldenshamba.org, and you can put the name, and then public can see it, and they will also contribute their own prayers and dedication, and I will also continue in my daily prayers and dedication as well. Okay, Natalie Baker, what is your favorite biography? And is there any biography of a teacher you would like to see translated in English? I think my favorite biography is Chungpo Nanjo. Yes, Chungpo Nanjo, the founder of the Shampa lineage. And, he lived 150 years old. It's a little bit like, it's a little bit of a, olden times way of telling the stories. And also there's a very much a human connection, and there's a, human touch, basically. It's not so religious, And I like his stories, Chungpo Nanjo's story. And I like Mochopa's story, which is a student of Chungpo Nanjo. And because he became a Buddhist, when he was a teenager. I like his story. And it doesn't have to be translated, it's already there. And the third biography I like it very much is that one, Gergangpa, the third lineage holder of the Shampa lineage. So that is number 3. And then the other, the biography that I like very much is Taranatha. Taranatha's biography is very, very beautifully written, easy to understand. It's not so much poetic. That's that. Yeah. Charlie, my son just said, look at all these hearts going into his arms. Yes, going into my arm. Right here. Okay, I think I will take one last question for this time. Usually we do only 1 hour, but this time we did 1 hour and a half. Yeah, we definitely did 1 hour and a half. Robert, Shamba Master biographies in English are in Like an Illusion by Nicole Riggs. Thank you very much for your time and advice, Empatia. So I will take one last question for today, and then we will close the session for this weekend. Thank you. See you again next Sunday? Definitely. Because I'm in my own home and apartment, so I cannot go to my own center because the German, in France, the border is closed. Okay, I'm still waiting for the question. Kamatenze Rinpoche, kindly say in Tibetan language sometimes. That Pukit only Karishubu in Atanda. Tanakun's Mountain Rupa Tan Jaga Denjompa Inji Nepali Mangoyorwa. Tanya Pukit only on Sikashu and Koron Soshita Chikotu Marid Istanbul. Okay. So there's one person who is asking question. Lila, Emily, what to do when we have to do 3 years retreat? If you want to do 3 years retreat, the most important is getting used to people. Monk, nun, lay person, doesn't matter. Basically getting used to people, because how do I say, majority of the Asian lifestyle is that families stay together, stick together, and whether getting married or not, basically everybody is like neighbor. And then and bringing new people in is kind of very, how do I say, it's not something that everyday life reality. And also, if you look at the Western society, and also the lifestyle, is that majority of the Western people, they become independent in their age of teenager. Like when they're 16, 15, 18, they rent their own apartment. Whether the parents paying for them or whether they pay by themselves, doesn't matter. Basically, they become extremely independent. And basically, both sides has a little bit of challenge of how to deal with the people that is not your family, and yeah, and many of them. And then so some of them, they just feel a little bit overwhelmed with the with this new reality. So whether you're a monk, nun, layperson, doesn't matter. Basically, you have to be in a place like such as like in a Dharma center or the monastery. It can be a monastery, it can be a Dharma center. You have to get used to with people like such as like around maybe 20, 30, 100 people, or maybe 50 people, So getting used to people in that kind of atmosphere have to become the new normal for you for at least 6 to 7 months. That's number one. Number two is that you have to learn how to make an instrument, because like right now we have a women's retreat, and soon we are going to start a men's retreat in America, in San Francisco. It is the branch of KDK. It's a retreat center. So so we have like that kind of retreat, but then at the same time, first is getting used to this being with the many people. That's number one. Number two is that learning how to make an instrument, and number three is not to take everything seriously, because if you take everything seriously, and then if you go to the retreat with that kind of a mentality, taking everything so seriously, especially with what other people are saying, and how other person is behaving and acting towards you and all that, taking too much seriously can lead you to a lot of disturbance mind, and also a lot of paranoia, because when you enter the retreat, whether we do in the Western retreat or whether we do in America retreat, everybody have to still sit in their meditation box. There's no compromising, because it's for Western people, then we don't need a meditation box. We can put them in the bed. We don't do that. Whether they're in the Western or either Eastern, like myself when I did retreat, we sleep in the meditation box for 3 years, for 3 years and 9 months. So, like the women's retreat that is ongoing right now, they are in their 3rd year. So they are still, they're doing their, retreat in the meditation box. So getting used to that before you enter the retreat, I think that's very important. So number one, getting used to the people that are not your family, like blood-related family. Number two is that learning how to make an instrument and prayers and practice. That's number two. Number three is getting used to, not taking everything so seriously. Otherwise, it leads you to a lot of paranoia. Number fourth is learning how to sleep in the meditation box before you enter the retreat. So basically what we do is that before we enter the 3 days retreat, we let people do a preliminary practice for at least 6 months, so they get used to the environment and the practice, and not to make things too seriously. So that's that. Yeah. So I think that's it for this time. And I'm very glad that many of you are enjoying this moment and this time sharing together. And I just want to say again, please stay home, and please look after yourself and look after your family and look after your health, and don't be extremely paranoid. I'm here, and then continue to make your prayers, and please be safe. And I'm sure this crisis will be overcome soon. And please share a correct and the true information, not some kind of a screenshot sharing to everybody. Please share the right information, so it can save other people's life. It can protect them from the false information. At least that's what we can do, even we are staying home, in order to help other people. So yeah, many tashidele, and good wishes to all of you. And I see you soon this next Sunday. Okay? And many of you, take care. Best wishes, Tashtele.